Hi Rory.
Hey Kylie.
What are we talking about today?
Today it is the entitlement importation process.
Woohoo! What we own.
What we own, yes.
Getting it into our SAM suite.
That too.
Or not, depending.
Yes, because again, we are not the data owners necessarily. There are people out there who will be doing stuff with contracts like the contracts department, procurement,
exactly.
etc.
Yeah, absolutely. But also I think SAM suites can only take you so far, and potentially there will always be some entitlement that is not worth inputting into the SAM suite because you just have to apply it manually anyway.
Yeah,
a controversial statement.
It's that thing. Don't wait too long to batch it up because it could be that somebody is expecting a report on the fact that it's imported into.
Well, I was more thinking that actually most ELPs are manual. The basic summing of entitlement versus deployment will be done by a tool, but you always have to have that manual gloss over it.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
So, anyway, that's a bit of an aside. So, entitlement importation. So we've got two streams here, really, don't we? One is the contract data, which has got all the terms and conditions that help us interpret what we own, and then we've also got the purchase order data, which tells us what we've actually paid for, doesn't it?
Yeah. And
invoice data, purchase/invoice data.
Yeah, and any sort of conflicting or overriding terms and conditions then that will come out of a subsequent merge once it goes into the SAM suite is quite important too.
Yeah, exactly. So who owns which data? We don't own either of those bits of data.
No.
We just use them.
We're at the behest of others, unfortunately.
Yeah, so the contract stuff will be in the contracts database.
Mm-hmm.
Now here's an interesting one. Often I see IT asset managers putting contracts into the SAM suite rather than
typing them in, you mean?
No, they'll just upload them into the SAM suite, and that's their contracts repository.
Right. Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Which I think is no. You should. I really do feel you should put them in the contracts repository that's owned by procurement.
And then there is the other extreme where wouldn't it be lovely and great if you could build a connector between the contracts database to a SAM or ITAM suite and contracts or procurement say, no, thank you, we're not having that. We don't trust you. So you've got to dig out Excel and do it the old-fashioned way and import it that way.
Yeah. And then you've got purchase order and or invoice data. Now we were a bit controversial with the way we wrote this process, weren't we? Because we said you could upload purchase order data.
Yeah, so we flagged it as a risk, didn't we? Rightly so. I think this is possibly the first time we've actually used the risk shape in any of the processes that we've done. If you think about it, your purchase order is on the left-hand side of the actual acquisition. So, a world of trouble could happen between that and the actual execution of the transaction. So. Purchase orders are an intent to buy, they're not an evidence of purchase. So, they're
not legal. They would never stand up in court or anywhere like that.
Be very, very careful.
Yeah. So in fact, what I also recommend organisations do is they run regular open purchase order reports so that they can see if there's purchase orders being raised that haven't had an invoice received against them, and then you can chase that down. So that's one way of managing that particular risk. Yeah,
or saying we don't import purchase orders would be another one.
Yeah, you just import invoices. So, a purist will tell you that invoice itself is not necessarily proof of entitlement.
I'm sure there's plenty of lawyers out there who like a good argument. So yeah.
Yeah, I always say an invoice is a very good place to start.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got an invoice, then you can be reasonably confident you own something. And in the old days, proof of entitlement genuinely was boxes and codes and things like that.
And dongles.
These days, not so much.
No.
So, an invoice is pretty sufficient evidence that you own it.
Yeah, and increasingly, bear in mind the nature of everything going to the cloud in this day and age, it's all about the money as opposed to like you say, the boxes.
Exactly. So, yes. So, we basically put it all in a structure that will allow us to get it into our SAM suite, don't we? Yeah,
so there's the mandatory and optional requirements, which are represented by columns on the spreadsheet. So we get that data in, and it's one of those things where a lot of effort now will save you quite a bit of effort once the data is in the SAM tool, because if it is wrong, there's grounds for change once it's in the SAM suite. But I worked for a particular organisation where if the change was substantial and you had to make it in the SAM suite, they decided no, we're going to remove it, we're going to make the change back in Excel and then re-import it again, because the Excel import template was a record of transaction, a record of statement of history, etc. So they wanted to be able to refer back to it if over the period of time.
Crikey.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Interesting.
So that's a way of working.
Yeah.
So,
So whatever you import, your SAM suite will interpret it, but you do need to just check that it's interpreting it correctly. And this is a really classic process that throws out orphan data left, right and centre, isn't it? So do keep an eye open for those cases where your SAM suite's saying, we don't understand this data. And then you need to go back and understand and investigate and figure out what's gone wrong and put it through the orphan data process to get it on the right track again.
yeah, absolutely, and it is that thing of alignment to business units as well, or cost centres or geographies, however you've set up your company structure within your SAM suite as well.
Exactly. So
I'm just having flashbacks to that project manager that I know. She bulk purchased 800 remedy cows for a project.
right.
Said to the SAM suite, put those to one side. I don't want them going in the license pool. What happened? They went to the license pool. So when she needed them 3 months later, they weren't there. But yeah.
That's
So
quite common.
again, you've got your company hierarchy there potentially. Projects and programs absolutely needs to be in there.
Yeah.
And I would suggest putting a programs folder in, and then you can have as many projects as you like feeding off of that, and you can just sort of assign software that way.
That's a good idea. I hadn't thought to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as long as you make sure that you remember they're temporary.
Well, that's fine. Yeah, no, because once they go BAU, once it hits the IT estate, it's then a decision as to well, that's assigned to a current project.
Yeah.
Who's going to be the owner come BAU, and then it becomes more of a drag and drop as opposed to, oh my God, I've got to take all that software and then assign owners and God knows what else.
Yeah.
So
So what processes lead out of this?
I need to look. I can't.
Oh, come on, Rory, it's really obvious. It's the license compliance process.
Yes.
License pool management process.
And you mentioned it already, the orphan data process as well.
Yeah.
And
then the asset data validation, software asset data validation process.
Yeah. Yeah. Particularly this, because this is the evidence to say that this is what you've bought. So getting that right is really quite important.
Yeah. So it's a relatively simple well, it's not actually, because it's got those two streams. You've got to manage the contract and you've got to manage the invoice data and marry the two up.
Yeah.
Get it all into your SAM suite working properly. It's really not that simple, is it?
It's one of those. There aren't that many sheets. There's only 3 sheets to the process, but it's one of those. The devil is in the detail.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with Aris when we model it, is the size of box doesn't relate to the amount of work that you do for each function step, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So it's one of those. And this is where the licensing knowledge comes in then at that point, or appreciation of licensing knowledge is.
Absolutely.
It looks like this on a contract, but what does it look like in the SAM suite? And the two have to link up. So
For sure. Great. So I think that's it, really.
I think that's it.
You know what the next one is?
I'm going with inventory importation, is it?
Yes, it is.
But hey, more of the same.
Just on the other side of the coin, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So we'll see you then.
All right, catch you then.